unless the music that the person is trying to play puts a smile on their face, nothing else matters. So for the purpose of someone later in life who wants to learn, the priority's got to be joy. Music's the ultimate human connector. But nothing brings people together like music.
Welcome to the Health and Piano podcast, where we cover interesting topics to do with health and well-being, especially later in life, and also the therapeutic powers of music. I'm really pleased to have a special guest today, Dr. Mark Deeks. Hi, Mark.
Hi, thanks very much for having me.
No problem. Yeah, I heard you on a podcast a few weeks ago. I thought it was really interesting. There was a lot of things that kind of resonated with my own piano story, but yours is especially interesting and varied, from heavy metal, is it, or rock? I don't know if you call it rock or metal or both, but especially the health side of music. So would you just like to share a bit about what your experience is of the healing and therapeutic powers of music?
I mean, how long have we got? I mean, when you've been around music as long as me and you have, we've got quite a few stories to share. But yeah, I mean, my background is really piano is my instrument. Started learning piano when I was 5 years old. By the time I was 15, I was teaching piano, and I'm 47 now. So that's a lifelong accompaniment in my life. But as you mentioned, other styles of music are also part of my story. So I'm in 2 signed metal bands, and I have a PhD in heavy metal music because that's the music that's my passion. So a very wide-ranging musical universe, I think we can say. And then everything in between, like a lot of musicians. I had a teaching career, ran a college music department for 8 years, and I've run community choirs for 25 plus years as well. So very varying, but the thread through all of that, I've started to sort of perhaps increasingly become aware of later in my own life, is what music gives us other than, just great music. The entertainment is all great and the music that we enjoy is all great. But what happens to us as a result of actively engaging with music and perhaps reframing slightly how we think about it in terms of being a well-being tool as well as something that we just enjoy as entertainment. So yeah, that's been an increasing thought process over a number of years, perhaps the last 8 or 9 years perhaps. And that really stemmed from talking to both piano clients who, similarly to you, I've often specialized in adults in later years in life. I think there's a lot of fun can be had, and a lot of joy to be gained, and a lot of benefits to be had from people perhaps who have previously ruled out it going to be possible for them to play even something simple and rudimentary, and the joy that can bring. I get a huge kick out of that. And the same with people who join my choirs. They're often people who are either in the second half of their life, shall we say, or retired, or people who've now got a little bit more time on their hands. Perhaps their kids have grown up or left home, and it's a chance to really start to evaluate what's important to me and what means the most to me. And music is obviously a big part of that. So yeah, the thread through all of my career is very much a thinking of music in that kind of context rather than just entertainment.
And I was really impressed with with the TED Talk as well, which you did, as well as the podcast I heard you on. I think most people would agree that music can be a relaxing, a de-stressor. I think a lot of people would say, "Oh yeah, I sort of get that." But you were talking about directly helping, say, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. So, yeah, I thought that was really powerful. Your own personal story as well. So you got experience of that. Do you want to share a bit about how it sort of
Yeah,
helped you personally?
yeah, absolutely. So I think that in my mid and late 30s, I would occasionally have periods of what I would call lowness rather than depression. I didn't really, I mean, perhaps this was technically depression, but I didn't really feel that I was really, really suffering severely at that point. It would just be occasional sort of, I just can't be bothered today. I feel quite down and sort of sad, but not really knowing why or how or where that had come from. And it wouldn't last very long. It might only last a few hours or a day or two, and I'd be fine for a while. Um, but they started to get a little bit more frequent. But again, nothing that I didn't really feel was manageable. And then the major sort of tipping point for me and for my family was in 2020. So March 2020 is often thought of by most people on the planet as being the kickoff of something that most people will have seen on the news. There was a pandemic, apparently. But in our house, that was also the time that we were facing a real sort of personal loss. So myself and my wife, Angela, we were expecting our first daughter. We went to the 20-week scan like every new parent has to. And sadly, we got the worst kind of news. And our daughter was suffering from 2 terminal conditions, one of which was dangerous to Angela, my wife also. And it was recommended, which is always a strange word to say in the context of the sentence, but recommended that we have what's known as a termination for medical reasons, which is basically the bleakest of prognosis coupled with, but it's your legal choice to decide how to take that prognosis and decide what to do. And so that's a really sort of dark place to be in. And in the months that followed that, I was experiencing panic attacks and really high levels of anxiety and depression. And I would say that I've sort of learned in the sort of following years that through therapy and talking more about it, that I feel I've probably always been quite an anxious person, but the connection between a trauma and panic attacks seems to be quite well established as far as the medical sort of profession is concerned. And so I knew that I'm a songwriter, I'm in 2 bands, and I've played musical instruments all my life. I knew that music was going to have to be sort of part of the story and part of the way that I processed what I was going through. But I also knew I didn't want to write lyrics about it because that would have felt really crass to me. It didn't really feel like who I was. And at the time I was writing an album for my solo project, which is called Arth, which is an old Northumbrian word, which means my native land. And it's all lyrics about Northumbrian history. It's the most niche thing of niche things you can imagine. But I was writing this album about the journey of St. Cuthbert's bones from Holy Island, the Holy Island of Lindisfarne, to Durham Cathedral, where they now reside. And because I'd already decided I didn't want to write lyrics about what I was going through, that obviously just didn't fit. But I needed to use music somehow to process it. And so essentially what happened was my brother-in-law had arranged for a star to be named after Laurie, as we'd named her, Mark Deeks, and this beautifully ornate star chart arrived in the post as a surprise, as a gift, showing where the Mark Deeks star is in the Andromeda system. And the coordinates of that star form part of my tattoo on my arm. I call that my heart on my sleeve, so I can see it's there deliberately so I can see it when I play piano and guitar. And I suddenly sat up in bed one morning, 3:00 in the morning, with an idea, which I still to this day don't really know where it came from. But it was essentially, what if I pretend those numbers aren't star coordinates for a minute? What if I just pretend they're the notes of a musical scale? What does that sound like if I play it as a melody? And so there was an immediate melody formed, and I went for a run and worked out some chords underneath it as I was running and sort of looping this melody around in my head. And that melody went on the end of the first Arth album. And to most people, the thousands of people who bought that record, they mostly have no idea what that melody is. But to us, that's as deeply personal as it gets, because what it meant for me was it was a way to sort of, the daughter I'd never met was now real, because if she hadn't existed, this melody had never existed, would never have existed. And so it became much more real and sort of legitimized what we were going through. And it was like therapy. And it was a way of turning this awful thing into a positive thing and sort of try to process what was happening. And that was really sort of the first step of, now I feel like I can start to pull myself out of this somehow. And obviously it's a pain that never leaves you, but music was a huge comfort. And every time I hear that melody, every time we play it live, or it's difficult, even though the lyrics I'm singing are nothing about it, but it means an awful lot that she has sort of been immortalized in that way on tape. And it became the sort of fire for what you referred to in my TEDx talk, and talking about our relationship with music and how we think about music, and how if we just reframe what it means to us in terms of, like you say, everyone thinks music will acknowledge that music can affect your mood, but how? And if it's, the point is, it doesn't matter what kind of music it is. So one of the things I sort of poke the bear about a lot is that people talk about certain kinds of music are relaxing, certain kinds of music are angry and upbeat and violent, or and they're always talking about the music that I love at that point. But I genuinely find heavy metal music relaxing and comforting, and gives strength and solace. And so my message is always like, whatever music comforts you and gives you strength or calms you down or puts a smile on your face is okay. Like whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But think about music in that way, and I think you'll have a really powerful tool to combat whatever life throws at you. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, it's amazing the power of music, isn't it? How it really gets to our deep emotions. So obviously your story, I can just only imagine how powerful that is every time you think of that melody.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole emotions that are immediately linked to that melody. But I'm always amazed how deep the musical connection seems to be. So people, often from childhood as well, there's a lot of people will have music from their childhood, and that particular song then will bring them back. And the person could be in their 80s, but then they're transported back to age 8, for example, if their parent or grandparent or whatever used to sing this song, it really transports them back into time, and the emotions are there. Or there's obviously people have the song from the wedding, or there could be a song from a funeral, but it's incredible how powerful it is. And also at dementia as well, I've played in a few care homes and things for people that I've literally seen in front of my own eyes somebody that was non-verbal for weeks and sometimes months. Then you play a certain tune from their childhood, and then they are singing all the words. It reactivates aspects of their brain so they can speak normally for that period of time. And then I came back a month later, and the same person was there, and they were singing away and doing the. And the nurses said that person hadn't been out of their bed since the last time I was there playing music, and they hadn't spoken in that period. This was like a month later.
Yeah,
so it's something that parts of the brain had actually shut down, but this inner bit, music was getting into the inner bit and was actually stimulating that. So the power of it is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm no scientist or doctor, but I understand from people I've spoken to that that's because it's literally a different part of the brain that is involved in speaking to singing and remembering lyrics, and music is therefore sort of the last thing to go, which is, becomes incredibly powerful to see. I've had similar experience taking some of my choir singers into a dementia home, and yeah, exactly what you describe is hugely powerful. But yeah, I think we've kind of sort of lost sight of what music can be. I sometimes talk about music sort of hiding in plain sight, in that most of us will have access to all of recorded music on our phones. We could access any song we like at a moment's notice. And it's almost a section of society has therefore taken it for granted. And, when I'm doing sort of keynote speaking at conferences or businesses, I'm talking about how if we can establish that music affects our mood, then that is surely just well-being in a very basic context. In that if we know that X artist, band, song puts a smile on our face, then being able to intentionally make ourselves smile is a well-being tool. I don't need to have medical training to know that when we're talking about how can we improve our well-being, we're talking about how can we improve our mood, lift our spirits, how can we make ourselves feel better, even only temporarily, and take the sort of stresses of modern life away for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And that's a powerful weapon. I always say to my piano clients, the rate you get good at the instrument is not the rate it does you good. They're two separate measuring sticks. As adults, we have this sort of predisposition to sort of imagine that we have to be good at something in order for there to be any value in it. And that's just not the case. You can on day one, when you're all concentrating about, does my finger go here? That 15 minutes or whatever it is a period of time that you're not stressing about X, Y, and Z. And then it's mindfulness under another name. So I think I talk about the power of intentional playlists, knowing what list of songs puts a smile on your face, what songs make me smile, what songs calm me down, what songs remind me of someone I love, the power of memories, exactly like you're talking about, and have those lists as playlists on whatever platform you listen to music, or as a written down list for the next time you want to put a record on, or whatever it might be. Music is hiding in plain sight. You've got access to all of it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to constantly searching for the next silver bullet for how we can improve our mood. Music's there, ready.
Absolutely, yeah. And in your book, you talk about breaking the myths, the most common myths that, which again, I hear the same kind of things, that people believe these myths, that they're either too old, that if you don't start learning when you're a child, then it's too late. That's probably the biggest myth that I hear. Also, that it takes an awful lot of time. So lots of time in the week to practice, but often years then to get any good. So people think that they're busy, they don't have enough time. Sometimes they don't start. What are the main myths that you've heard, and how do you overcome those?
Yeah, I mean, all of those that you state, the age one is a huge one, the time one is the other big one. And I think that if we take those two as an example, the reason that most people sort of make those assumptions or leaps of this must be the case is that they're measuring themselves against becoming good enough to be a professional. Because adults, as I said before, we're always like, we must be great at this or there's no point. And for learning an instrument, that really isn't the case. So every adult has a concept in their head of what a finished piece of music sounds like, or what a professional recording sounds like, or something they've seen on the telly, or an artist they've been to see perform live. And we have this sort of subconscious measuring stick from I am a complete beginner to all the way in this vast distance, time that land has forgot, where professional piano players live, or whatever the instrument is. And all that, I would never get to be as good as that, so I won't start. But the value and the joy begins immediately, and that's taking a negative outlook as to what to use the cliche, the journey is. In that, people, I had one client who, she said she'd literally wanted to play piano for more than 50 years. She'd been playing piano for 3 days. She was trying to play. I'd given her a video lesson on "Can't Help Falling in Love with You" by Elvis. So it's not a very complex piece of music. Of course, you could play it in 20 different ways, depending on how proficient you are. But obviously, she was right from the nuts and bolts in the weeds at the beginnings. And she said that she was trying to play through the tune, and her husband came down the stairs and said, "Are you playing Elvis?" And the joy of that moment was just like priceless for her. And it wasn't because she could play it great. In the measuring stick of could she be a professional piano player, she was theoretically an awful piano player. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she had played a recognizable tune in only 3 days. And as a result of that, her husband of 50 years or whatever had recognized it, and had that moment. To be able to play a tune that is recognizable is, of course, a massive, memorable moment for anyone who learns an instrument. And of course, if you've been with that person for 50 years and they couldn't believe that you're after 3 days doing this, even though I'm sure it was clunky and rudimentary, it just doesn't matter. So was she playing it like I would play it? No. Did it matter? No. Because that wasn't the point. So the measuring stick is not from complete beginner to pro in the distance. It's, can I get so I can play the first few notes? Can I get so I can put together the first few chords? Is someone going to recognize this tune after a few days, or whatever it might be? There's value and joy in that. That's where the value is. You know, when I was saying before about the rate you get good at it is not the rate it does you good. It does you good straight away. You don't have to be great at it before it does you good. So, all kinds of stories like that where, yeah, the myths that people have about, I'm too old, there's no point, I didn't do it as a kid. And the time one is the other classic one. People have this impression that you would only ask a child to play for 10 minutes. Surely. I'm an adult. I should be able to play for an hour, 2 hours a night. And because I'm an adult, and therefore you're bound to want me to play for an hour, and I don't have time. That's what they mean. They don't mean I haven't got 5 minutes. I haven't got 10 minutes. They mean I haven't got an hour or two, because that's, I'm sure, what you're going to ask me to do. And so when I say I don't want you to play the piano ever for longer than 15 minutes, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I say, well, it's all right if you want to play the piano for 15 minutes more than once in the same day if you want. But I think little manageable chunks that you're going to do 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, it feels more obtainable, and therefore starts to make you feel a bit more positive about, well, I could do that. And once you're in that kind of mindset, then I think more things happen as a result of it, rather than the kind of thing that we've all done. I'm going to join the gym, and I'm going to go 6 times a week, and I'm going to lose 5 stone by the summer holidays. And none of those things happen because we're human and things get in the way. So start out with small goals. And also, it comes back to this idea that if you want to become a professional and you're going to be great at it in the measuring stick of humanity, then yeah, you're probably going to have to put some time into it. But most people who want to learn to play the piano in their later years have no ambitions whatsoever of becoming professional piano players. They just want to play a few tunes and chill out at home and have someone walk in the room and go, are you playing that? That's great, that. Have another cup of tea. There's huge joy in that. So yeah, the myths are often myths because they're measuring the wrong thing, I think.
I think as well, I think the myths might have originated because of classical music. Because I started age 6 doing all the classical stuff. And at the time, this is in the it would have been early 70s. The only option, if you want to play piano, the only option is go and find a piano teacher within a small radius of your house. And they get the piano grade books, and the pieces are chosen by the examination board. And you will play these classical pieces. You start at grade 1 and you move through the grades. That's what you do. Of course, on TV, I was watching Top of the Pops. And in school then, when I was 11, I saw this guy get up and he sang some Elvis stuff, just a cappella with a mic. And then he did a Beatles one. And he heard that I played piano. Now, this was all classical I played, right? But I thought, that's cool. I want to do that. I want to be up on the stage with everybody clapping in school. But I didn't know how, because I'd got all these dots and stuff. And then I sort of realized there was a gap from what I've seen on TV. So the pop bands and things, and then seeing Paul McCartney, the videos of him on TV and things. And then the classical world, I spent a lot of time by that stage on the exams. And I just realized that these other kids in school started playing guitar chords. So they would get a Beatles Complete book, it was called at the time.
Yeah.
They'd flick a page, they'd see some chords, and they'd start strumming guitar. And then they'd flick another page and they'd play it. I'm going, wait a minute, where's all the dots? How come you can just play a song like almost instantly? Flick a page and do another song. You don't have to have rehearsed it for like weeks and months. And I was going, this is a different world of music that I knew nothing about. But yet that was the fun bit and so easy. So that's what got me then onto the realizing that there's multiple worlds of music, of which the classical is one. And it's not the only one. Whereas now what's great, I think, is people do have many, many ways to learn piano. And there's different learning types. So now there's the visual way of learning. Some people will learn by watching somebody play and memorize it on YouTube or something, or watching a tutorial video within an online course. Some people will do the kinesthetic. They will memorize how it feels, chord shapes, and then they'll, that's other people will read notation, sheet music. There's a lot of different ways of learning, but notation was the primary one. And if you were dyslexic, or for older people with low sight and things, reading all these dots, and a lot of people with some learning needs as well struggle with the abstract nature. So that dot is a letter and a letter is a key. So there's a few abstracts in there and every single note you're playing, if you're playing like fast, then you're reading lots and lots and lots of notes, and there's no patterns ever shown in it. It's all the individual notes. Whereas other methods like chords, suddenly, John Lennon, if you're playing Imagine, the entire verse is 2 chords. So there's lots of different ways of actually getting to the point of being able to play music that is recognizable and songs that you love. And I think being able to find a method that suits your learning type and then finding songs that mean something to you that you passionately want to play them, I think then you're probably halfway there. And it's incredible how easy, as you're saying, in 3 days, somebody could play something that other people would actually recognize as the song.
Mm-hmm.
So it's incredible how quickly people can learn if you pull together these various things. But I think partly why the myth comes about is in my day, all my siblings went to the same piano lessons and they all gave up within a year and they all couldn't play a single thing. And they think that they're not musical.
Yeah.
My view now is, no, they're just as musical as me. It's just that I persevered and suffered because of guilt, because the rest all gave up. But once I found my thing, which was then playing the music I wanted to play, playing by chords, and then I learned how to play by ear, and then I started composing at 13, and a whole world opened up, and now I'm pretty musical. But I could have been one of those that packed it in because I didn't really enjoy reading all the dots at the time.
Yeah. I was lucky. My piano teacher, whilst I had a very similar experience, so I started learning piano 82, so I was early 80s, and exactly the same, the classical grades, you're going to work through these, etc. But my piano teacher was also a big jazz fan, and so he was much more of the mindset of playing by ear, learning solos, like chords and stuff, and learning to play songs that I wanted to play. So it was like that kind of stuff was always going alongside the classical stuff, so I kind of got much more of a two-pronged attack, which I was very lucky to have. So he'd say, what do you actually want to learn how to play? And I'd say, the Match of the Day theme tune or the Star Wars theme tune or something. That was what I was into. And so he would write them out or show me how to play them. And so there was always that kind of personalized, stylized stuff that was going on. But I think that comes to the key thing for me. And the way certainly I approach all my teaching is that what the music is, and therefore, as a result, the motivation that's attached to it, is more important than anything. So, yes, I think we've got two elements there. One element is the method of the transferring of the knowledge, be it notation, be it chords, be it copy my hands, be it play by ear. But then there's the other key thing, which for me is almost more important than that, is unless the music that the person is trying to play puts a smile on their face, nothing else matters. So I'll often say to people, I can teach you to play piano versus Metallica or Mozart, and I genuinely don't care which one you want to learn how to do. But unless you choose the thing that is going to motivate you and bring you joy, then no trick, finger exercise, chord, technique thing in the world that I can show you will serve any purpose, because you won't even sit at the instrument if you don't want to. Because kids will pretty much stay sat down for the next 5 minutes if you told them they're going to do piano practice. Adults will have the power to go and avoid it in any of a million ways. They will put the bin out. They will go and do the dishes. They will go and do, oh yeah, that grass really needs cutting. So if you can't make it enjoyable, nothing else matters. So my first question to any of my clients is always, what music do you want to learn to play? Because that is what we're going to learn how to play. I can teach you about chords and theory and melodies and harmony and all kinds of things and show you the technique and show you how to play on any music you want. Doesn't matter to me. I'll play what music I like when I get a chance to play what music I like. So for the purpose of someone later in life who wants to learn, the priority's got to be joy. It's got to be motivation. Otherwise, nothing serves a purpose.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, totally, yeah. What's your proudest moment through either in the teaching side or the performance side?
I mean, performance side, I guess, varying. So, I mean, I played at Carnegie Hall, which was pretty cool, with a choir that I was on tour with, accompanying them. And obviously that's held up to be one of the great, if not the greatest venue for a musician to aspire to play in New York. I conducted the Royal Northern Sinfonia with 300 singers a couple of times at the Sage Gateshead in Newcastle, big sort of concert hall. And that was like a really proud moment. I remember thinking, I wish my granddad had seen that one. That was kind of one of those moments. And then in the band side of things, last weekend we played a show in Belgium to 3,500 people. That was great at a festival in Belgium. I think I was trying to think if I'd ever played to a bigger crowd, and I can't think of one at the minute, but that was a great moment. Obviously in a very different musical sphere. So they're the sort of performance stuff, I guess. And then teaching wise, I just love the stories that come out. Like the lady, her husband recognised a tune in a few days. I think one of the most sort of moving ones is a lady I know who was a client who she'd suffered from an eating disorder for a long time and had tried various things over the years to sort of combat that. And she found that playing piano fixed it. I mean, not permanently, not completely, but she found it had a huge impact. And she considered her eating disorder in remission as a result of it. Because she had, and again, without any of the medical training, I can't be specific, but the concept basically was that her disorder had become a habit that she didn't want. So by replacing it with a habit that she did want, anytime she felt the urge to do something she didn't want to do, she went and played piano and was able to sort of quite quickly curb the thing that she didn't want to do. And I mean, as a piano teacher, like I couldn't really sort of imagine that impact. I really love hearing the stories about the ripple effect of what happens. So like one client said to me that after 7 days, she felt that she was sleeping better because she'd inserted I talk about like, where can you put the 10 or 50 minutes in your day that's going to have like the biggest impact? It's sort of experiment with it in different places. And she was using it as like a pressure valve on her day. So the last thing she did before she went to sleep was to play piano for 10 minutes. And she felt in 7 days she was sleeping better, not because she was a great piano player, but because that was the impact it was having on her sort of mentally and emotionally to sort of just let the stress of the day go. Right now I'm off to sleep. And of course the ripple effect, as I talked about, well, what happens with the ripple effect if someone's sleeping better for their family, for their job, etc., for their health, overall health. So yeah, I really love hearing those stories that come out.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I'm just always amazed by the variety and the range at which people find music helps in their life. So, I mean, there's on the level I suppose I probably would have expected is the confidence side, because I found that as a child. I was painfully shy and I had a terrible stammer and I had a load of spots and I wasn't sporty. So when I was like 13 and stuff, I was not a cool kid at all.
Yeah, I feel that.
And obviously having a speech problem then made it awkward to try to overcome that shyness from a social point of view. But music with them was the one thing which I could build a bit of confidence on, because I could get up there in front of the school and do something which they perceived as cool. Mm-hmm. And I could get people applauding and clapping without having to speak.
Yeah. No,
then once I could do something better than other people, then wow, then I was practicing loads. So, and then we put on concerts and stuff. And I think having some kind of solid ground which you could build from then enabled me then to build like all my confidence through business and social and other things. And my speech has improved massively. I think it's always going to be slightly there. It's one of those things, I don't know if you'd ever cure it, but it's now so that it's not perceptible to most people at all. So most people wouldn't even know I ever had any problem. So I think confidence is one that I've just seen many students have said it's just transformed all aspects of their life. But there's been many which I didn't expect, such as grief. There's a lot of other students would be in their 70s and 80s, and quite a few have lost a partner, for example, or children as well. Yeah. But if they're living on their own, there's found that then by having there's a few thousand people online, so they can make friends with people that are sharing the same journey of a similar age. Yeah. And quite a few of the students now choose the optional kind of buddy scheme. So obviously some people just want to play on their own and that's totally fine. But for people that like the social engagement, they can be paired up with a buddy or several people, maybe like 4 or 5 people. So there's people meeting up now physically. They'll have a piano party around at somebody's house and posting all the videos of them all eating all this lovely food and playing piano and big smiles. And that's just like, they're just saying this has transformed their social life. But then there's all the physical things as well. There's people that have had strokes that have got the movement vastly improved in their hand and things. So physically, so it is like physiotherapy, but as you say, if you try and make somebody sit down for 5 minutes doing something which they don't want to do. So if it's a squeeze that squeezy ball because the physiotherapist told you to, okay, you'll do it. But 5 minutes of doing that seems like forever. You'll be bored.
Yeah, yeah.
And you probably won't do half an hour of that. And you almost certainly won't do an hour of that. Whereas if you're playing piano, you might go up for 5 or 10 minutes. And our students say time just goes. They forget that they've been up there because they're just loving it and just keep playing. So the physiotherapy aspect, lots of people, arthritis as well, they're saying it's really improved arthritis. There's a whole host of, mental, physical, emotional benefits that I'm just always amazed. The stories that come in is just like things that I never would have imagined piano could have helped with. It's,
Yeah. No, it's a powerful tool for sure.
yeah. And so your book, I think that'd be really useful for our audience to read. What's the best way for them to get access to that?
Yeah, so the website's just markdeeksmusic.com and then /book. You'll see the book in the menu at the top as well. So markdeeksmusic.com, or it's on Amazon, as these things need to be, whichever is the personal preference.
And it's called Not Another Piano Book.
Yeah, Not Another Piano Book, and the subtitle is How Everything That Stopped You Playing Like a Piano Legend So Far Shouldn't.
Fantastic. Yeah. I like how you say book as well, because I say book, because I'm from Lancashire.
I'm talking to a Geordie now, so that's a book.
So, yeah, my dad used to always have fun with book and book. And
Not Another Piano Book.
yeah. And a question I'm interested about this, because again, I love playing live to concerts and stuff. I think it's great, but obviously it's an interesting world, I think, because there's the world that people see. Say they see the couple of hours or so that you're on stage. What they don't see is all the stuff that happens around it, and I just find it really interesting. So, have there been any sort of funny story, mad or embarrassing or whatever things live, either on stage or off stage, and anything?
I mean, there are hundreds of stories, for sure. I've often threatened to write a book called Gigs We Have Known and Loved and share some of the stories. In the band, we call it freight logistics. Being in a band is just working for a freight company, really. Excuse me. So it's just really, the effort it takes to go and play in another country. For example, we're going to play for 45 minutes in Italy on Friday. And that is months of planning, driving down to Stansted, parking 3 cars, flying our instruments to Italy, getting picked up, driving in both directions. And yeah, I mean, we played in Belgium last weekend. That was a 16-hour journey back to Newcastle, driving all the way. It's the things the fans don't see, surely, for being in the band are extensive. It's a huge commitment for those 45 minutes or hour on stage. But, when you walk out and there's a few thousand people with their fists in the air or whatever, then that's a great moment. But yeah, it's the same with, I used to do an awful lot more than I do now, of playing piano at weddings. And yeah, when you're around weddings enough, you see some extraordinary events. My favourite being, which one should we choose? My favourite being the groom who, in his speech, compared his new wife to Hitler, complete with large photo on the PowerPoint presentation screen. He did a This Day in History, pointless tat information. The long jump record had once been broken on this day in history, etc. And apparently it was the anniversary of the Nazi Party coming to power in Germany. And he turned to his new wife, and the punchline was, so as long as she doesn't think she's starting her new regime tomorrow, we'll be absolutely fine. And nobody, I repeat, nobody laughed. Except me. I mean, my shoulders were shaking at the back of the room. I was like, oh, you are going to pay for that forever.
Man.
You're never winning another argument again. You compared me to Hitler on our wedding.
Can you imagine? What?
So I've got plenty of stories I can tell.
My favourite from playing was things going wrong. Because like I say, because you rehearse this and you plan this. There's 2 come to mind just immediately. One is I had I don't know whether you remember the old valve amps. I had a Sounds City amp, and we slightly changed the words. Sounds not very good amp, and but it's an old valve one. And again, it's like it worked fine, it had worked fine and stuff. But of course, on the gig, then we had a gig at school. I was still a teenager at the time, and we got the school hall, and all the kids are in. And of course, we had a sound check during the day and things, and then we're playing the gig. And of course, you always crank it up to whatever you think like that's the right level, but it fills up with people. You get excited, you want more volume. So this poor amp had been working like way more than it ever had, and now it's on full. Suddenly, like all the dust that must have settled on the valve suddenly caught fire. This pyrotechnic, it still works. They still continued playing as we just put fire blankets off. Just trying to get it
Got
on.
away with it.
We continue, yeah. But the other one which comes to mind of the same era was see, because then, like now, I'd just laugh at these things, but then it was serious. We were embarrassed if things didn't work right. And I was doing the keyboard solo for Van Halen, Jump, and I played in this Jupiter 8, which I don't know if you've ever felt the weight of a Jupiter 8.
Yeah. They're heavy ones.
Incredibly heavy. And anyway, so I was giving it all under the keyboard. I got right down and I got my hand up here and I'm under the keyboard trying to show off. And I started playing like that, but the keyboard wasn't equally on the stand, and I was playing down like one side of it, and it starts sliding off. So as I'm playing the keyboard like that, the keyboard's sliding off. So the singer had to run around. He's trying to push up this keyboard. It was not cool at all. So
Yeah. Yes, gigs we have known and loved. There's easily a 2-volume book in that, I think.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful world. I was just actually on Saturday. There's the Irish music festival every year. It's called the FLA, Kyo, the FL. It's spelled FLA, FLEADH, and it's the Irish traditional music festival. So a few 100,000 people go to a town, and then all the pubs and streets have music all over them, and they put tents and outdoor things, and so there's music everywhere, and it's a turn up and play type of thing. So they do have some organized gigs, but most of it is just people with instruments just go. And there's a lovely tradition of you just join in. So everybody's welcome to join in with other people that are sat there. And this was just lovely from, again, just the opposite end of the world from other forms of music. Some music that's the notes, that's what you have to play. This is the exact opposite. So virtually everybody in that world learns by ear. And the skill levels are incredible. The amounts of notes that have been played is just really incredible. But to sit in and play, I brought my keyboard. I love these battery powered ones that you can just walk around and sit in and play. And it's just wonderful to hear that everybody that comes in the session, and then other people leave because they have to move on and play somewhere else, and other people come in, and the group evolves over time. And it's amazing the different influences and the different styles of songs. That way of playing to me is really lovely, but just the socialness and kids on the street of all ages, to me, it's just an absolutely wonderful approach to music. Very informal and very inclusive and very social.
Yeah, music's the ultimate human connector. But nothing brings people together like music.
Yeah.
And so when you harness that, it's really powerful.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thanks, Mark. That's been really
You're very welcome.
Interesting, and you're doing fantastic work there. I think it's a message which I really resonate with, and
likewise,
yeah, fantastic.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Declan. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yeah. For more information on the Health and Piano podcasts, and to get some free tips on learning piano later in life, go to DecPlay.com/free.